So back to the channel, guys, in another chess video, and I'm back again with another brilliant game of mine. And this game is brilliant because I won this even after blundering some of my pieces, and I even sacrificed my queen in this game to checkmate my opponent in the next 3 moves, and my queen sacrifice was tagged as a brilliant move by Stockfish as well. So without any further ado, let us see this amazing queen sacrifice game of mine. So in this game I was playing with the white pieces and I opened up with e4, the king's pawn opening. Opponent replied with e5, knight f3, knight c6, and after bishop to c4 we have the Italian game on the board, and opponent brought out his queen too early with the move queen to f6, which is a mistake because you must develop your knights and bishops first going out before coming out with the queen and starting your attack. That's why I think this move is a mistake. Now I simply continued with d3 and opponent played h6. This is a preventive move. So this move prevents the move bishop to g5. And now I simply pushed d4 and opponent played bishop to c5. Opponent was also developing his pieces. Now I developed my knight on c3 and opponent plays d6. And now I jumped in with the knight with the move knight to d5, and I am threatening the c7 knight takes on c7 fork here, as well as attacking the queen. And the opponent moved his queen to d8. That saves both threats, that protects him from both threats of losing his queen, and also safeguards the c7 pawn. And now I played c3, and my main intention behind the move c3 was to play b4 and trap my opponent's bishop. But here in this position my opponent made a prime blunder of playing the move knight to f6, and he completely missed the point that his bishop will be trapped. And now I simply played b4 and there's no way to save the bishop. Although my opponent played knight takes on d5, but I simply took it, and here as you can see the bishop's still trapped. Bishop has no moves at all. If the bishop goes to b6, then simply a5. So in this position opponent played knight takes on b4, and after this series of moves he decided to sacrifice his knight for 2 pawns, because I think he wanted to preserve the bishop pair, that's why. Anyways, now the opponent plays bishop to c5, and now I castled king side. We have the c6 on the board, and now I moved my bishop to a2, and opponent moved his bishop to b6, and now I played h3, and opponent also castled king side, and now I moved my knight to h2. And in this position I was planning to move my king to h1 and simply continue with moves like f4 to get a pawn break. However, that doesn't happen, and in the future my knight actually got trapped, as you will see. So my opponent played queen to f6 and he again moves his queen to f6, and now I played bishop to e3. My point was that after the bishops will be traded, the f file will be open for my rook as well, which will be attacking the queen, so I will gain some time that way. But my opponent, instead of trading the bishops, played bishop to d8, a backward bishop move, and now I played knight to g4 attacking my opponent's queen. And I actually wanted my opponent to take my knight with his bishop, so I will have the bishop pair. But I don't know why this move is a mistake. Anyways, opponent continued with queen to g6, and if I move my knight anywhere, then bishop takes on h3 is coming. So in this position should have played king to h1, but instead I played king to h2, and this was a big blunder as my knight has no moves in this position. My knight is literally trapped. Taking advantage of this, opponent played h5 and he won my knight. So I decided to sacrifice my knight for a pawn at least, and now I continued with f4, and opponent played h4, and opponent in this position was threatening queen to g3 check. However, I didn't saw that and continued with f5, which was even a big blunder as I ended up losing my bishop after these series of moves. And in this position I became completely hopeless, but I still tried my best to at least draw this game, or maybe win this, because you never know when your opponent can blunder a piece and give you a winning chance. So I continued with rook to f3, gaining tempo over the queen, and my opponent moved his queen to g5, keeping his queen on the g file. And now I continued with queen to e1, and opponent played bishop to b6, and in this position I had no moves at all. Opponent had all the advantage and he should have won this if he wanted to. He actually must have wanted to win this, but in the end he made such a prime blunder that actually made him lose the game. So now I played g4, and I expected my opponent to take en passant, so that way I can open up the g file. But my opponent was smart enough to not take en passant and instead played bishop to d4, gaining a tempo on my rook. So I had to move my rook to b1, and now my opponent played b6 and I continued with f6, and opponent plays g6 to close the position, and now I played queen to e2. And in this position I was just making random moves. I had no plan of continuing or of how to continue this game. So now my opponent continued with bishop to e6, and my opponent was actually doing a great thing of trading pieces, because whenever in chess you are up material, you must trade pieces and simplify, so you can win in the end game. So that's what my opponent was trying to do. We both traded bishops, and after f takes on e6, I doubled up the rooks on the f file, also safeguarding the f6 pawn, and my opponent played rook to f7, blockading my pawn and also preparing rook to f8, so he will himself double up on the f file and will win the pawn. So now I moved my queen to g2, and opponent continued with his plan by playing rook a to f8, and this pawn will be gone soon. There's no way to save this pawn. So now I played queen to c2. So if he takes my f6 pawn, I will at least take his c6 pawn. That was my main idea behind this move. And now opponent played c5, and he told me, no, you won't be getting this pawn. So I said okay, and continued with queen to c4, because now I am attacking his another undefended pawn on e6. And now he played the move rook takes on f6, and it turns out to be a big blunder, because here comes the brilliant move queen takes on e6 check. And unfortunately for black, he cannot take the queen, because if he does so, then he'll get mated in a few moves. That's why this is a brilliant queen sacrifice. And my main intention behind this was to checkmate my opponent. However, my opponent fell for this trap and took my queen by playing rook takes on e6, and it's all over now. It's a mate in 3 for white now. So now I simply played rook takes on f8 check, king moved to g7. Now the other rook joins the party via rook 1 to f7 check. King to h6 is forced, and now I finished this off with rook to h8 check and mate. What a brilliant combination that was in the end. And had my opponent in this position, had my opponent not taken my queen, the game he would have still the game would have still went on, still continued, and it would have been almost equal. But my opponent chose to take my poisonous queen and blundered his game. So that was it for today, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.